The buzzards circled overhead when Samuel Cray found her. She lay in the dust like a broken doll, arms wrapped around her knees, head bare as a newborn's. The October sun had already started its cruel work on her scalp, painting angry red stripes where her hair used to be. Blood had dried in thin lines down her neck. Her dress, what remained of it, hung in tatters that barely covered her shame. Samuel had been tracking strays when he spotted the birds. Now he wished he'd turned back. "Mum?" His voice came out rougher than intended. The woman didn't move, didn't even flinch when his shadow fell across her. "Mum, you hurt?" Slowly, like a wounded animal testing for danger, she lifted her head. Her eyes were the color of winter sky, pale, cold, haunted. A purple bruise bloomed across her left cheek. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. "They said I was a disgrace." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Said I brought shame to their family name." Samuel had seen cruelty before. Apache raids, cattle rustlers, claim jumpers. But this was different. This was family turning on its own. He could read the story in her wounds, the rough hands that had held her down, the dull blade that had scraped away her dignity along with her hair, the boot prints in the dirt where they'd left her to die. His ranch stretched for miles in every direction, empty except for cattle and memories of his dead wife. The nearest town was a hard day's ride. Out here, a woman alone wouldn't last the night. Coyotes hunted in packs, and they weren't the only predators in these parts. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah." She pulled the remains of her dress tighter. Sarah Hutchins was Sarah Hutchins. The Hutchins name carried weight in these parts. Old money, older grudges. If they'd done this to one of their own, she must have crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Samuel studied her face, searching for deception, for madness, for anything that might explain why a family would leave their daughter-in-law to rot under the desert sun. He found only exhaustion and a stubborn spark that hadn't quite died. "Can you stand?" She tried, collapsed, tried again. This time she made it to her knees before her strength gave out. Samuel reached for her, then stopped. A woman in her state might not welcome a stranger's touch, no matter how well-intentioned. "I won't hurt you," he said. "They all say that." But she let him help her to her feet. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of distant rain and something else, smoke. Samuel's eyes found the dark smudge on the horizon, maybe 10 miles south. Someone was burning something big. Back at the ranch house, Sarah sat at Samuel's kitchen table while he worked in silence. He'd given her one of his dead wife's dresses, blue calico that hung loose on her smaller frame, and a hat to shade her raw scalp. She hadn't spoken since they'd arrived, just stared at her hands like they held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. Samuel set a bowl of stew in front of her, then retreated to the far side of the room. Distance felt safer for both of them. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why what? Why help me? You don't know what I did." He'd been wondering the same thing. Taking in strays was one thing, cattle, horses, even the occasional drifter. But a woman with Hutchins' blood and fresh wounds was trouble with a capital T, the kind that followed a man home and burned down everything he'd built. "Doesn't matter what you did," he said. "Nobody deserves that." Sarah laughed, but it came out broken. "My husband's brother thought different, said I was a whore and a murderer, said I killed his brother with my wickedness." The words hung between them like smoke. Samuel had heard rumors about the youngest Hutchins boy, Thomas, barely 19, married to some girl from back east. Word was he'd died in a riding accident 3 months back. Thrown from his horse, neck snapped clean. "Did you?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Sarah's spoon clinked against the bowl. Thomas was gentle, sweet, nothing like the rest of them. Her voice grew distant. "He wasn't a good rider. I told him not to take that stallion out alone, but he wanted to prove himself to his brothers, always trying to prove himself." "That's not an answer." She looked up then, meeting his eyes for the first time. "No, I didn't kill my husband, but I didn't mourn him the way his family thought I should. And when his brother James started visiting my bed at night," she let the implication settle, "I fought back." Samuel felt something cold settle in his stomach. He'd known men like James Hutchins, the kind who took what they wanted and justified it with scripture and superior breeding, the kind who'd shave a woman's head and call it righteous punishment. Fighting back isn't murder, he said. It is when you push a man down the stairs and his neck breaks the same way his brother's did. Outside, Samuel's horse whinnied nervously. He moved to the window, pushing aside the faded curtains his wife had sewn years ago. 3 riders sat their horses at the edge of his property, too far to make out faces but close enough to read intent. They weren't moving, just watching. They found you, Sarah said behind him. Samuel's hand drifted to the colt on his hip. How many brothers? James is dead, but there's cousins, hired men. Half the county owes the Hutchins family money or favors. She stood, smoothing down the borrowed dress. I should go. You've done enough. Where? They'll run you down before you make 5 miles. The riders came at sunset, slow and deliberate like a funeral procession. Samuel counted 8 men, all armed, all wearing the hard faces of men who'd convinced themselves they were doing God's work. They stopped 50 yards from the house, just outside easy pistol range, but close enough to make their point. Walter Hutchins sat his horse in the center of the group, silver-haired and straight-spined despite his 70 years. He was the patriarch, the one who signed the banknotes and decided which families thrived and which ones failed. Seeing him here meant this wasn't just about family honor, it was about control. Samuel Cray, Walter's voice carried across the distance like a judge pronouncing sentence. You've got something that belongs to us. Samuel stepped onto his porch, rifle loose in his hands. Sarah stayed inside, but he could feel her watching from the shadows. Don't see how that's possible, Walter. This is my land. The woman, she's a murderer, killed 2 good men, and ran from justice. Funny thing about justice, Samuel called back, usually involves a trial, judge, jury, due process. Walter's horse pranced sideways, eager for action. Its rider was holding back. Some crimes don't require a courtroom. Some justice comes swift and final. Behind Walter, Samuel recognized faces from town, the bank manager, the dry goods merchant, even young Pete from the livery stable. All of them beholden to Hutchins' money in one way or another. All of them here to watch or participate, depending on how this played out. She claims self-defense, Samuel said. She claims a lot of things. Claims James forced himself on her. Claims Thomas's death was an accident. Claims she's innocent of everything except fighting for her virtue. Walter spat into the dust. But we know what she is, what she's always been. The wind had died to nothing, leaving the air thick and oppressive. In the distance, thunder rumbled though no clouds marred the darkening sky. Samuel felt sweat gathering under his shirt collar despite the October chill. Maybe she is what you say, Samuel admitted, but she's under my roof now, my protection. You want her, you'll have to go through me. 1 man against 8, Walter observed. Poor odds, even for someone with your reputation. Samuel had earned that reputation the hard way, tracking outlaws for the territorial marshal, surviving range wars, putting down claim jumpers with quick draw and steady aim. But that was years ago, when his reflexes were faster and his cause was clearer. Maybe, but I'll take at least 3 of you with me. Question is, which 3? Samuel's eyes swept the group, watching each man calculate his odds of being among the survivors. Walter, you willing to bet your life on getting that woman back? The old man's face hardened like granite. Cray, you've got till dawn to think it over. Send her out with the sunrise, and we'll call this a misunderstanding. Keep her, and we'll take her over your dead body. After the riders faded into the gathering dusk, Samuel found Sarah sitting by the cold fireplace, turning something over in her hands. As he drew closer, he saw it was a small silver locket, tarnished with age. Thomas gave me this on our wedding day, she said without looking up. Said it belonged to his grandmother, the only Hutchins woman who ever showed me kindness. Samuel settled into his wife's old rocking chair, feeling the familiar creak of worn wood. Tell me about him, your husband. Sarah's thumb traced the locket's surface. He was soft, in a good way. Read poetry, loved music, preferred books to horses. His family despised him for it, called him weak. She looked up, eyes bright with unshed tears. But he saw beauty in things, in me. made me feel like I was worth something more than what others saw. What did others see? A factory girl from Boston, father dead from drink, mother dead from shame. I had nothing when I answered the advertisement for a mail-order bride, nothing but a strong back and a willingness to work. Her laugh held no humor. Thomas didn't care. He said love was about souls recognizing each other, not bank accounts. Samuel remembered his own wife's hands, work roughened but gentle, capable of bringing life into the world, or easing someone out of it. Sounds like a good man, the best I knew, which is why I couldn't let them spit on his memory by turning me into their property after he died. Sarah's grip tightened on the locket. James said it was tradition, said Thomas's widow belonged to the family, to do with as they pleased. When I refused, she touched her scalp gingerly. This was mercy according to them. They could have done worse. Outside, a coyote howled, long and mournful. Soon others joined in, creating a chorus that spoke of hunger and loneliness and endless searching. Samuel stood and lit the oil lamp, pushing back the darkness that seemed to press against the windows. "Why didn't you run sooner?" he asked. "Where? I had no money, no family, nowhere to go, and part of me thought, hoped." She shook her head. "Foolish dreams. I thought if I proved myself useful, worked hard, kept quiet, they might eventually accept me, let me grieve in peace and find my own way. Instead they tried to break you, break me, own me, use me up and throw me away." Sarah stood, moving to the window where she stared out at the star-filled sky. "But I'm still here, still breathing, still fighting." Something in her voice, defiance mixed with determination, reminded Samuel of his wife during her final illness, the way she'd faced death with dignity intact, refusing to let pain steal her essential self. "What will you do?" he asked. "If we survive tomorrow?" "Keep running, I suppose. Keep fighting. Find some place where the Hutchins name doesn't carry weight." She turned back to him. "What about you? Why risk everything for a stranger?" Samuel was quiet for a long moment, listening to the coyotes sing their ancient songs. "Because some things are worth dying for, and letting good people face evil alone isn't living anyway." Dawn came gray and cold, painted in shades of gunmetal and regret. Samuel stood on his porch, rifle ready, watching the riders emerge from the morning mist like phantoms given flesh. They came in a line this time, Walter Hutchins in the center, flanked by men whose faces showed no doubt about their purpose. Behind Samuel the door opened. Sarah stepped out, wearing the blue dress and carrying a small bundle, everything she owned in the world. Her chin was raised, defiant despite the fear he could see in her eyes. "This is my fight," she said quietly. "Always has been, not anymore." Samuel's voice carried the weight of a man who'd made his choice and would live or die by it. Walter reined up 20 yards away, close enough for conversation, far enough for maneuvering. "Last chance, Cray. Step aside." "Can't do that, Walter." The old man's face hardened. "Then you've chosen your grave." "Maybe, but here's what I'm wondering. You really want to explain to the territorial marshal why 8 armed men killed a rancher and kidnapped a woman on his own property? Even with your influence, that might be a hard story to sell." "What marshal?" Walter's confidence never wavered. "Nearest law is 3 days' ride. By the time anyone official gets here, this will be a tragic case of self-defense. Rancher went mad, tried to molest a grieving widow. We were forced to stop him, except for one problem." Samuel smiled grimly. "I sent my foreman to town yesterday with a letter, detailed everything. Sarah's story, your threats, your intentions, should be in the marshal's hands about now." He was lying, of course. His foreman had died 2 winters back, and he'd been working the ranch alone since. But doubt flickered across several faces in the group. "You're bluffing," Walter said, but his voice held less certainty. "Am I? You willing to bet your family's reputation on it?" For a moment the tableau held. 2 groups of people balanced on the edge of violence, waiting for someone to tip the scales. Then Sarah stepped forward. "Enough." Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Walter, you want me, here I am. But first, Let me tell these good men what really happened to James. Sarah, don't. Samuel started. He didn't just force himself on me, she continued, ignoring Samuel's warning. He told me about Thomas, how they spooked his horse on purpose, how they wanted him dead, because he was weak, because he embarrassed the family name. James laughed when he told me, said Thomas died calling my name. The words hit Walter like physical blows. Around him the hired men shifted uneasily. Killing for family honor was one thing, murder for inheritance was another entirely. She's lying, Walter snarled, but his voice cracked. James kept a journal, detailed accounts of everything, the planned accident, the cover-up, his plans for me afterward. I found it in his room. Sarah pulled a leather-bound book from her bundle. It's all here, every ugly truth your family tried to bury. Walter's face had gone white. Around him the circle of loyalty began to crack, as men realized they'd been drawn into something darker than they'd bargained for. Even if that's true, Walter said desperately, you still killed him, still murdered my nephew, in self-defense, after he confessed to murdering my husband. Sarah's voice never wavered. Any court in the territory would call it justified. The standoff stretched another heartbeat. Then young Pete from the livery stable holstered his gun and backed his horse away. I ain't part of this, Mr. Hutchins, not if it's true about Thomas. One by one the others followed until only Walter and two hard-faced men remained, family retainers who'd follow orders regardless of their content. This isn't over, Walter promised. Yes it is. Samuel stepped forward, rifle trained on the old man's chest. It's over because I'm taking Sarah to the territorial capital myself, turning over that journal to the proper authorities. Your family's done enough damage. Walter's eyes burned with hatred, but he was beaten and knew it. Without another word, he wheeled his horse and rode away, his remaining men following like mourners leaving a funeral. Years later, Sarah would remember that morning as the moment her real life began. She'd testified before a territorial judge, watched the truth about the Hutchins family spread across 3 counties like wildfire. The bank had foreclosed on their holdings within a year, scattering the clan to distant territories where their name carried no weight. She'd married Samuel Cray the following spring, in a ceremony witnessed by half the territory. They'd built a good life together, raising cattle, fostering orphan children, standing as proof that second chances could bloom into something beautiful. But it was that October dawn she treasured most, when she'd finally found her voice and discovered that sometimes, just sometimes, truth was stronger than power, and courage could triumph over cruelty. The morning sun painted the empty prairie gold, and for the first time in months, Sarah Cray smiled without reservation.